The phone rang at 3 in the morning, jolting me awake. My sister Bethany's voice was pure panic. Seraphina, what the hell did you do? There are 2 police cars in Mom's driveway right now. They're asking about financial documents and saying something about fraud charges. Mom's crying and they want to talk to you immediately. Whatever you think you know about Dad's will, you better start explaining because this whole family is about to implode. But before I dive into this wild family revenge story, I need to know, where are you watching from tonight? If you're ready for a tale of betrayal, hidden secrets, and ultimate justice, hit that like button and subscribe because this gets absolutely insane. 3 months before that terrifying phone call, I was simply Seraphina Matthews, a 28-year-old forensic accountant living quietly in Portland, Oregon. I had always been the family outsider, the one who asked too many questions, who noticed discrepancies others overlooked. My father had passed away 18 months earlier, leaving behind what we thought was a modest estate. Mom got the house, Bethany got his vintage car collection, and I received his old desk and filing cabinets. At the time, it seemed like the least valuable inheritance, but I didn't mind. I had always been closer to Dad than anyone else in the family. It started innocently enough. I was cleaning out Dad's desk drawers, preparing to donate the furniture when I discovered a hidden compartment. Inside were documents that made my blood run cold. Bank statements showing massive transfers I had never heard about. Investment accounts worth millions that were never mentioned in the will reading. Property deeds to real estate in 3 different states. But most shocking of all were the handwritten notes in Dad's careful script, detailing his growing suspicions about someone systematically stealing from his business over the past decade. The more I dug, the more horrifying the picture became. Dad had been the owner of Matthews Construction, a successful company he had built from nothing over 30 years. According to these hidden documents, someone had been embezzling funds through fake vendor accounts, inflated material costs, and phantom employee payroll. The theft totaled nearly $4 million over 8 years. Dad had been conducting his own investigation before his sudden heart attack, and these papers were his evidence. But the most devastating discovery was a letter dated just 1 week before Dad's death. In his shaky handwriting, he wrote about his heartbreak over discovering the identity of the thief. He couldn't bring himself to prosecute because it was someone he loved and trusted completely. Someone who had access to all the company accounts, who knew every client and vendor, who could manipulate the books without raising suspicion. The letter ended with his plan to quietly restructure his will to ensure the stolen money would eventually be recovered and properly distributed. That's when I found the real will, not the one that had been read to our family. This version, properly notarized and witnessed, told a completely different story. Dad had left specific instructions for a forensic audit of the company. He had documented every suspicious transaction, every false invoice, every manipulated entry. He had also left detailed instructions about recovery of the stolen assets, including several properties that had been purchased with embezzled funds. The most shocking revelation came in the final pages. Dad had discovered that the embezzlement wasn't just about greed. It was about funding an entirely separate life. The thief had been using stolen money to pay for a secret apartment, expensive gifts for a hidden romantic partner, luxury vacations disguised as business trips, and even tuition for private schools that our family couldn't normally afford. The betrayal went deeper than financial crime. It was a complete double life built on deception and stolen dreams. As I sat in Dad's home office, surrounded by evidence of this massive betrayal, I felt my world shifting. Everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie. The person who had been crying the loudest about Dad's modest estate was the same person who had been systematically stealing his life's work. The family member who had insisted on a quick private will reading without lawyers present was the one who had everything to hide. I spent the next week methodically photographing every document, organizing the evidence, and verifying the information through public records. Dad's hidden investigation was thorough and damning. Bank routing numbers matched secret accounts. Property purchases aligned perfectly with major embezzlement dates. The paper trail was so clear that even a novice could follow it. The hardest part was accepting that Dad had died carrying this terrible knowledge alone. He had been protecting our family even while being robbed blind by someone he loved. His heart attack suddenly made more sense. The stress of discovering such a massive betrayal from someone so close must have been unbearable. He had been trying to find a way to handle the situation without destroying our family, but death had taken that choice away from him. Now I held all his evidence, all his pain, all his carefully documented proof of the greatest betrayal imaginable. The question that kept me awake at night was simple, but devastating. What do you do when you discover that someone you love has been systematically destroying everything your father worked to build? Armed with Dad's evidence, I knew I couldn't handle this alone. I needed legal advice, but more importantly, I needed to understand exactly how deep this betrayal went. I contacted Dad's longtime attorney, Mr. Richardson, who had mysteriously been excluded from the will reading. When I showed him the real will and Dad's investigation files, his face went white. "Seraphina, this changes everything," he said, adjusting his glasses as he reviewed the documents. "This will supersede the one that was presented to your family. But more concerning is that someone clearly knew about your father's investigation and tried to cover it up by presenting a false will. This isn't just embezzlement anymore. This is fraud, forgery, and possibly conspiracy." Richardson explained that the will my family had been shown was a crude forgery. The signatures were traced, the witness names were fabricated, and the notary seal was fake. Someone had created this document to hide Dad's real intentions and prevent the forensic audit he had ordered. The level of premeditation was staggering. "We need to move carefully," Richardson warned. "If confronted directly, the perpetrator might destroy additional evidence or flee. But we also can't wait too long because statute of limitations issues could complicate recovery of the stolen assets." I made the decision to approach the family member I suspected, my own mother. The evidence was overwhelming. She had been Dad's business partner for 15 years, handling all the administrative and financial aspects while he focused on construction and client relations. She had access to everything, knew every system, and was present for every major financial decision. Most damning of all, the secret apartment lease and the private school tuition payments were in her name. I chose to confront her on a Sunday afternoon when Bethany was visiting. I wanted witnesses, and I wanted everything to be out in the open. I arrived at the family home with a briefcase full of copies of Dad's evidence. My heart was racing, but I knew this conversation would define the rest of our family's future. "Mom, we need to talk about Dad's business." I began setting the briefcase on the kitchen table. I found some documents in his desk that raised serious questions about the company finances. Her reaction was immediate and telling. Her face flushed red. Her hands started shaking and she began speaking rapidly about how Dad's filing system was always messy and unreliable. Before I had even shown her a single document, she was already making excuses. I opened the briefcase and spread out the bank statements, property deeds, and Dad's handwritten notes. "Mom, I need you to explain these transfers to accounts I've never heard of. I need you to explain property purchases that weren't mentioned in the estate. And I especially need you to explain this apartment lease with your name on it." The silence that followed was deafening. Bethany was staring at the documents with confusion, asking what was happening. Mom's face had gone from red to completely pale. Her carefully constructed facade was crumbling in real time. "You don't understand," she finally whispered. "The business was failing. Your father was making terrible decisions. I had to protect our family's future. I had to make sure we would have something left when the company collapsed." But I had anticipated this defense. I pulled out Dad's meticulously documented business records showing consistent profitability, client satisfaction reports, and industry awards. Matthew's construction had been thriving until the systematic theft began. "Mom, Dad documented everything. He knew exactly what you were doing. He knew about the fake vendor accounts, the inflated invoices, the phantom employees. He knew about the apartment, about the money you were spending on things that had nothing to do with our family. He was investigating you when he died. That's when she broke down completely. Through tears and desperate explanations, the full truth came pouring out. She confessed to the embezzlement, but claimed it started small. Just a few $100s here and there to cover household expenses when business was slow. But it had grown into something massive and uncontrollable. The secret apartment wasn't for an affair. It was where she had been hiding her growing gambling addiction. The luxury gifts were actually payments to loan sharks who had threatened our family when her debts became unmanageable. "I never meant for it to go so far," she sobbed. "I kept thinking I could win it back, that I could replace the money before your father noticed. But the gambling got worse and the debts kept growing and I couldn't stop. When your father started asking questions about the accounts, I panicked. I thought if I could just make the inheritance look smaller, buy myself some time, maybe I could still fix everything." Bethany was staring at our mother in complete shock. "You've been stealing from Dad's company? For how long? How much money are we talking about?" The number hit us like a physical blow, nearly $4 million over 8 years. Our family's entire future had been gambled away, and Dad had died knowing the truth but unable to bear destroying us with it. But the confession was just the beginning. Now came the consequences, and I was about to learn that confronting the truth is only the first step in a much longer and more complicated journey toward justice. The immediate aftermath of Mom's confession was chaos. Bethany was vacillating between rage at the betrayal and protective instincts toward our mother. She kept saying things like, "There has to be another way to handle this," and "We can't destroy our family over money." But this wasn't just about money. This was about justice for Dad and accountability for years of systematic deception. Richardson advised me that we needed to move quickly, but strategically. "Seraphina, your mother's confession is important, but we need to secure all remaining evidence before she has a chance to destroy anything else. We also need to understand if there were any accomplices, or if she was acting alone." I made the difficult decision to contact the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. This wasn't a family matter anymore. It was a federal case involving mail fraud, wire fraud, and potentially tax evasion. Special Agent Jennifer Walsh was assigned to our case, and her first directive was clear. We needed to maintain normal family relationships while she conducted her investigation. "I understand this is incredibly painful," Agent Walsh explained during our first meeting. "But any change in your family dynamics could alert your mother that law enforcement is involved. We need time to trace the money, identify all the stolen assets, and build an airtight case for prosecution." Living with this secret knowledge was torture. I had to continue family dinners, holiday celebrations, and casual conversations while knowing that every interaction was potentially being monitored by federal agents. Mom seemed to believe that her confession to me would be kept within the family, and she began making plans to gradually pay back the stolen money over several years. But Agent Walsh's investigation was uncovering even more disturbing details. The gambling addiction was worse than Mom had admitted. She had been frequenting underground poker games and high-stakes betting operations that were themselves under federal investigation. Some of the people she owed money to had connections to organized crime, which explained why she had been so desperate to continue stealing even when Dad started asking questions. More shocking was the discovery that Mom had been planning to flee the country. Agent Walsh found evidence of passport applications under false names, bank accounts in the Cayman Islands, and correspondence with immigration attorneys about residency requirements in non-extradition countries. The tearful confession about gambling addiction was just another layer of deception designed to buy her time to escape. 3 weeks into the federal investigation, I got an unexpected ally in the most surprising place. My father's business partner, Marcus Rodriguez, contacted me directly. Marcus had been Dad's closest friend for over 20 years, and he had his own suspicions about the company's finances. "Seraphina, I've been wanting to talk to someone about this for months," Marcus confided when we met for coffee. Your father came to me about 6 weeks before he passed away. He was asking strange questions about vendor payments and employee records. He seemed stressed about something but wouldn't give me details. After he died and your mother took over the business completely, I started noticing discrepancies. Marcus had been conducting his own informal investigation. As the senior foreman, he knew every subcontractor, every supplier, and every employee on every job site. He had discovered that several of the vendors listed in the company books didn't actually exist. Payments were being made to businesses with no physical addresses, no employees, and no work history. I started making phone calls, Marcus explained. These companies are complete fabrications. Someone created false business licenses, fake tax ID numbers, and phantom bank accounts. The sophistication of this fraud is way beyond what one person could manage alone. This revelation changed everything. Mom hadn't been working alone. Someone with technical expertise in business formation and financial systems had been helping her create this elaborate network of fake vendors. The question was who Agent Walsh was intrigued by Marcus's findings and asked him to become a formal cooperating witness. Together, we began mapping out the full scope of the fraud. Marcus provided access to job site records, employee timesheets, and supplier contracts. I contributed Dad's hidden investigation files and my forensic accounting expertise. Agent Walsh brought federal resources and investigative authority. But as our alliance grew stronger, so did the resistance from unexpected quarters. Bethany had initially been supportive of finding the truth, but as the investigation expanded and the possibility of criminal charges became real, she began pushing back hard. "You're going to destroy our family," she accused me during a heated phone call. "Mom made mistakes, but she's our mother. She's already suffering enough. Why can't we just make her pay the money back and move on with our lives?" I tried to explain that the stolen money was already gone, spent on gambling debts and hidden expenses. There was nothing left to pay back. But Bethany wasn't interested in financial realities. She was focused on family loyalty and avoiding public scandal. The situation became even more complicated when Bethany hired her own attorney to protect the family's interests. Attorney James Morrison made it clear that he viewed me as the primary threat to family stability. He began pressuring me to halt the federal investigation and accept a private settlement arrangement. "Miss Matthews," Morrison said during a tense meeting, "you need to understand that prosecuting your own mother will have devastating consequences for everyone. Your family will be destroyed, your father's business reputation will be ruined, and you'll be left with nothing but legal bills and regret. There are better ways to handle family financial disputes." But Morrison didn't understand what I had learned from Dad's hidden investigation. This wasn't a family dispute. It was organized criminal activity that had destroyed my father's life's work and possibly contributed to his death. No amount of family loyalty could justify allowing that to continue unpunished. The pressure from Bethany and her attorney was intense, but it only strengthened my resolve. I realized that seeking justice for Dad meant I might lose the rest of my family in the process. Some betrayals are so deep that forgiveness becomes impossible, and some crimes are so serious that family bonds can't protect against consequences. As Agent Walsh's investigation neared completion, I prepared myself for the possibility that the 3 a.m. phone call I eventually received would signal the end of my family, as I had always known it, but the beginning of something much more honest and authentic. Just as Agent Walsh was preparing to execute search warrants and make arrests, my carefully built alliance began to crumble from within. The devastating blow came from the person I least expected, Marcus Rodriguez's dad's supposed best friend and business partner, who had been helping with our investigation. It started with small inconsistencies. Marcus began missing scheduled meetings with Agent Walsh, claiming work emergencies that seemed increasingly fabricated. When he did show up, his information became vague and unreliable. Documents he had promised to provide mysteriously disappeared, or were suddenly locked away by company lawyers. Agent Walsh noticed the changes immediately. "Seraphina, I'm concerned about your ally Marcus. His cooperation level has dropped significantly, and some of the information he provided earlier isn't checking out under deeper investigation. We need to consider the possibility that he's compromised, or was never fully honest with us from the beginning. The truth hit me like a sledgehammer during what should have been our final preparation meeting. I had arrived early at the coffee shop where Marcus and I usually met, and I overheard him on a phone call in the parking lot. His voice was low but urgent, and what I heard made my blood freeze. She knows too much, and that FBI agent is getting close. We need to shut this down now before everything unravels. The original plan was working fine until she found those hidden documents. Can you make sure those records disappear permanently? I ducked behind a car and kept listening, my heart pounding so hard I thought he might hear it. Marcus continued. I told you from the beginning that bringing Linda into this was risky. Gambling addicts are unpredictable. But the money was too good to pass up, and your connections made it seem foolproof. Now look where we are. The devastating realization crashed over me. Marcus wasn't just a witness to Mom's embezzlement. He was her partner in crime. He had been the technical expert who helped create the fake vendor accounts and phantom businesses. His construction expertise had made it possible to inflate material costs and create believable false invoices. While Mom handled the gambling and money laundering side, Marcus had been the operational mastermind behind the systematic theft. But there was more. The person he was talking to on the phone wasn't just a random accomplice. Based on the conversation, it was someone with access to official records. Someone who could make documents disappear from government databases. The corruption went deeper than just family betrayal. It involved public officials and possibly organized crime connections. I realized that Marcus had volunteered to help our investigation specifically to sabotage it from the inside. Every piece of evidence he provided, every insight he shared, every strategy meeting he attended, all of it was designed to give him advance warning about what Agent Walsh was discovering and how close the federal investigation was getting to the full truth. When Marcus entered the coffee shop and saw me sitting at our usual table, his face briefly showed panic before shifting into his practiced, friendly expression. But now I could see through the facade. Everything about his behavior over the past month suddenly made sense: the convenient memory lapses, the missing documents, the delays in providing promised information. "Hey, Seraphina, sorry I'm a few minutes late," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. Traffic was crazy coming from the job site. I had to make a split-second decision about how to handle this revelation. Agent Walsh had warned me that if we discovered additional conspirators, I should not confront them directly, but instead report back immediately. The investigation was too important to risk by forcing a confrontation that could lead to evidence destruction or flight. No problem, Marcus. Actually, I've been thinking about what you said last week regarding those vendor records. I'm wondering if we should slow down the federal investigation a bit. Maybe there's a way to handle this more quietly, keep it in the family. His relief was visible and immediate. That's exactly what I've been thinking. This FBI involvement is getting out of hand. Your family doesn't need that kind of scrutiny and publicity. Maybe we can work something out privately with your mother to recover what we can without destroying everyone's lives. For the next hour, I played along with his deception while he outlined a plan that would essentially allow him and Mom to escape accountability. He suggested that the family accept a token repayment of maybe 10% of the stolen money in exchange for dropping all criminal charges and federal investigations. He painted it as a compassionate solution that would preserve family relationships and avoid public scandal. But I was recording everything on my phone, following Agent Walsh's instructions for exactly this type of scenario. Marcus's own words were providing the evidence needed to prove his conspiracy and coordination with Mom. He was so confident that he had successfully manipulated me that he became careless about concealing his involvement. The meeting ended with Marcus believing he had successfully convinced me to betray the federal investigation in favor of a private family settlement. He thought his manipulation had worked, that his years of friendship with Dad had earned him enough trust to exploit. He had no idea that within hours, Agent Walsh would have recordings of his confession and detailed plans for expanded arrests. As I walked to my car, I felt a profound sense of loss that went beyond the financial crimes. Marcus had been like an uncle to me growing up. He had taught me how to use power tools, had attended my high school graduation, had been one of the people carrying Dad's casket at the funeral. Now I knew that even during Dad's funeral, he had been calculating how to profit from the chaos and grief. The betrayal stung worse than Mom's gambling addiction because Marcus had actively chosen to exploit our family's trust for personal gain. Mom's crimes had grown out of desperation and addiction, but Marcus had coldly planned and executed a sophisticated fraud scheme. He had looked Dad in the eye every day for years while systematically stealing from him. That night, as I prepared to turn over the recordings to Agent Walsh, I realized that this investigation had cost me more than just my relationship with Mom and Bethany. It had shattered my faith in family, loyalty, friendship, and trust. The people who should have protected Dad's legacy had been the ones destroying it. But sometimes the painful truth is the only path toward real justice. Agent Walsh's reaction to the Marcus recordings was swift and decisive. Within 24 hours, she had assembled a task force that included IRS investigators, state prosecutors, and experts in organized financial crime. The scope of the investigation expanded dramatically when they discovered that Marcus's connections reached into multiple construction companies across 3 states. Seraphina, what you uncovered changes this entire case, Agent Walsh explained during an emergency briefing. Marcus Rodriguez isn't just your mother's accomplice. He's been running a multi-state construction fraud operation that uses gambling-addicted business partners as front operators. Your mother was just one of several people he recruited to systematically embezzle from legitimate construction companies. The federal investigation revealed a sophisticated criminal network that had been operating for over a decade. Marcus would identify successful construction business owners who had personal vulnerabilities, gambling problems, addiction issues, financial pressure, or family crises. He would then slowly cultivate relationships with these business owners, eventually gaining their trust and access to their company finances. Once inside, Marcus would gradually introduce the business owners to underground gambling operations, often providing initial loans to cover losses and creating cycles of debt and dependency. As the gambling debts grew, he would offer solutions in the form of small borrowing from business accounts, always with promises that the money would be quickly returned. But the borrowing never stopped, and the gambling debts never disappeared. Instead, Marcus would systematically expand the fraud operations using his construction expertise to create believable fake vendors, inflated invoices, and phantom projects. The business owners became trapped in escalating criminal activity, unable to stop without exposing themselves to prosecution. The most devastating discovery was that Dad had been getting close to exposing the entire network when he died. Marcus had been pressuring Mom to recruit Dad as another victim, but Dad's careful nature and forensic mindset made him difficult to manipulate. Instead of becoming a victim, Dad had started noticing discrepancies and asking questions that threatened the entire operation. Agent Walsh showed me evidence that Marcus had been monitoring Dad's investigation efforts through Mom. Every question Dad asked, every document he requested, every suspicion he developed was being reported back to Marcus in real time. The stress of knowing that his best friend was systematically destroying his life's work, combined with the pressure of protecting his family from the truth, had likely contributed to the heart attack that killed him. Your father was a hero, Agent Walsh told me. His hidden investigation provided the roadmap we needed to uncover this entire criminal network. He knew he was putting himself at risk by documenting everything, but he was determined to protect other families from being victimized. But the most shocking revelation came when Agent Walsh introduced me to someone I never expected to meet. Rebecca Torres, a forensic investigator from the State Attorney General's office, who had been tracking Marcus's operations for 2 years. Rebecca had been building a case against the criminal network, but she lacked the insider evidence needed to prove the connections between the various construction company frauds. "Seraphina, your father's documents are the missing piece we've been searching for," Rebecca explained. "He documented not just his own company's theft, but patterns and methods that match our other cases perfectly. His investigation proves that this wasn't random embezzlement. It was systematic criminal enterprise." Rebecca had been working undercover posing as a potential business partner interested in investing in construction companies. She had identified at least 6 other business owners who were being manipulated by Marcus's network, but she hadn't been able to prove the connections until now. Dad's careful documentation provided the evidence needed to link all the separate cases into one comprehensive prosecution. Working with Rebecca gave me hope that justice was finally within reach. Unlike the family members who had betrayed and abandoned me, Rebecca was completely committed to exposing the truth and holding everyone accountable. She understood that this case was about more than just recovering stolen money. It was about dismantling a criminal organization that was destroying families and legitimate businesses throughout the region. Rebecca also helped me understand something important about the call to action I had been struggling with. "Seraphina, you have to realize that by pursuing this investigation despite family pressure and personal betrayal, you're protecting other families from becoming victims. Your courage is literally saving people from the kind of devastation your family experienced." The federal investigation moved rapidly once they had Dad's evidence and Rebecca's expertise combined with the Marcus recordings. Search warrants were executed simultaneously at multiple locations: Mom's house, Marcus's home and office, the underground gambling locations, and the various fake vendor addresses. The coordinated operation netted massive amounts of additional evidence, including computer files that detailed the entire criminal network's operations. Most importantly, the searches revealed that Marcus had been planning to frame Mom as the sole mastermind, while he escaped with the majority of the stolen funds. Computer records showed that he had been preparing to disappear with over $3 million, while leaving Mom to face prosecution alone. His supposed loyalty to Dad had been completely fabricated. He had been planning to sacrifice Mom to protect himself all along. The evidence was now overwhelming and indisputable. Financial records, recorded conversations, computer files, witness testimony, and Dad's hidden investigation all pointed to the same conclusion: a multi-state criminal enterprise that had systematically defrauded legitimate businesses and destroyed families for over a decade. As Agent Walsh prepared for the arrests that would finally bring justice for Dad and accountability for everyone involved, I realized that the 3 a.m. phone call from Bethany was about to become reality. But this time, I was ready for whatever came next, because I knew that truth and justice were finally on our side. The arrests happened simultaneously across 3 states at exactly 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Agent Walsh called me at 5:30 to let me know that warrants were being executed and that I should expect family members to contact me soon. She was right. The phone calls started before 7 a.m. Bethany was the first, her voice a mixture of panic and fury. "Seraphina, what the hell did you do? There are 2 police cars at Mom's house right now. They're putting her in handcuffs and taking boxes of documents. The neighbors are all watching, and this is going to be all over the local news. How could you do this to our family?" But this time I was prepared with the truth. "Bethany, Mom and Marcus stole nearly $4 million from Dad's company over 8 years. They were part of a criminal network that was destroying families across multiple states. Dad was investigating them when he died, and the stress of that betrayal probably contributed to his heart attack. This isn't about family loyalty. This is about criminal justice." The conversation that followed was painful but necessary. Bethany accused me of destroying our family for money, of being vindictive and unforgiving, of choosing strangers over blood relatives. But I had learned from Rebecca and Agent Walsh that protecting the truth is sometimes more important than protecting relationships built on lies and deception. Marcus was arrested at his construction office, surrounded by employees and clients who had trusted him for years. According to news reports, he tried to claim that he was just following Mom's instructions, and that he had been manipulated by her gambling addiction. but the evidence was too overwhelming for those lies to hold up under scrutiny. The federal prosecutors moved quickly to freeze all assets that could be traced to the stolen funds. Properties purchased with embezzled money were seized. Bank accounts were frozen, and luxury items bought with criminal proceeds were confiscated. The recovery process would take months, but preliminary estimates suggested that nearly 60% of the stolen money could be returned to the victimized businesses and families. Mom's sentencing hearing was the most difficult day of the entire process. She pleaded guilty to multiple federal charges, including wire fraud, mail fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. Her gambling addiction was presented as a mitigating factor, but the judge was clear that addiction doesn't excuse systematic criminal behavior that destroyed multiple families. "Mrs. Matthews, your crimes went far beyond personal weakness or poor judgment," Judge Harrison stated during sentencing. "You participated in a sophisticated criminal enterprise that devastated legitimate businesses and families. Your late husband's investigation shows that he tried to give you opportunities to stop, but you chose to escalate the criminal behavior instead. Mom received 8 years in federal prison with requirements for restitution and supervised probation upon release. Marcus received 12 years due to his leadership role in the criminal network and his attempts to frame other participants. The other conspirators across multiple states received sentences ranging from 3 to 10 years depending on their level of involvement. But the most meaningful moment came during the victim impact statements. Rebecca had arranged for several other families to attend the sentencing hearing, and I realized that I wasn't alone in this experience. Other daughters, sons, and spouses had discovered similar betrayals and had chosen justice over family loyalty. Sarah Martinez spoke about her father's construction company being destroyed by the same criminal network, forcing the family into bankruptcy and costing dozens of employees their jobs. Michael Thompson described discovering that his business partner had been systematically stealing from their electrical contracting company for 5 years, using the exact methods that Marcus had taught him. "These criminals didn't just steal money," Sarah said, looking directly at Marcus during her statement. "They stole our trust in family, our faith in partnerships, our belief that hard work would be rewarded. They destroyed relationships and shattered families for personal greed." As I listened to these other victims, I realized that pursuing justice had been the right choice, even though it cost me my relationship with Mom and Bethany. Sometimes protecting others requires sacrificing personal comfort and family harmony. Sometimes love means holding people accountable, rather than enabling their destructive behavior. The months following the sentencing brought unexpected healing and new relationships. Rebecca and I became close friends, bonded by our shared commitment to justice and truth. Agent Walsh invited me to speak at law enforcement training sessions about recognizing sophisticated fraud patterns. The other victim families formed a support group that met monthly to discuss recovery and rebuilding. Most surprisingly, several of Dad's former employees and clients reached out to thank me for exposing the truth. They had suspected something was wrong with the company finances, but they hadn't known how to address their concerns. My investigation had validated their instincts and helped them understand that their suspicions weren't unfounded. Dad's construction company was eventually sold to a group of former employees who were committed to rebuilding its reputation and honoring his legacy. They established a scholarship fund in Dad's name for students studying construction management and business ethics. The recovered assets were used to compensate victims and fund the scholarship program. Bethany and I haven't spoken since the arrests, and I've accepted that our relationship may never recover. She chose to support Mom regardless of the evidence, and I chose to support justice regardless of family pressure. Sometimes those choices are incompatible, and that's a consequence I've learned to live with. But I've also discovered that family isn't always defined by blood relationships. Rebecca, Agent Walsh. The other victim families and Dad's former employees have become my chosen family. People who share my values of honesty, accountability, and justice. These relationships are built on truth rather than obligation, and they're stronger because of it. As I finish sharing this story with you, I want to ask, have you ever faced a situation where doing the right thing meant risking important relationships? Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted was betraying that trust in fundamental ways? How do you balance family loyalty with personal integrity when those values conflict? If this family revenge story resonated with you, please share it with others who might need to hear that choosing justice over family pressure is sometimes the most loving thing you can do. Hit that like button if you believe that accountability and truth are more important than maintaining comfortable lies. Subscribe for more stories about finding strength in impossible situations and building authentic relationships based on shared values. Thank you for listening to my family's journey from betrayal to justice. I hope our experience helps you navigate your own difficult relationships and gives you courage to stand up for truth, even when it's painful. Remember that protecting others from harm is sometimes more important than protecting family members from consequences, and that real love includes holding people accountable for their actions.